Hi, my name is Stu Richards. I'm the CEO of Bredin, and I wanted to welcome you to the Fastcast, courtesy of the Cloud Software Association, on moving SMBs through the SaaS sales cycle. I'm going to, as we let folks log in, take a couple moments for those of you who aren't familiar with Bredin, just to give you a little bit of background on who we are and what we do. Our focus at Bredin is on companies, and you can see the logos of folks with whom we've worked over the years. The common thread is that everything we do for our clients is to help them to better understand and engage in the small to mid-sized business segment, primarily North America, but we've certainly done work around the world. And the way we help them to achieve their revenue goals at the end of the day among SMBs is really twofold. It's either to conduct original research into the mindset of small business owners or to develop content to help engage them. And by the way, sometimes when we say we focus on marketing to SMBs, that raises the question what we mean by SMBs. And we generally follow the Small Business Administration definition of small is up to, roughly 100 employees, mid-size is up to 500, but every one of our clients has a different definition of or sweet spot in the SMB space. So we zero in on, whoever it is that's of interest to our clients, whether it's by headcount or revenue or industry or stage of growth or you name it. And as I mentioned, the ways that we help our clients to achieve their marketing goals in the SMB space is usually through original research. And you can see the kind of audiences that we help them to conduct research with on the left. And that might mean just focusing on the principles of an SMB or a functional head like a head of IT or marketing or HR. It might mean at the C-suite level, all the way down to a sole contributor. Geographically, we can zero in on SMBs anywhere from a state or even metro area to worldwide. Or by looking at them by specific industries or, again, sizes, or even for example, whether they're customers or prospects or, potential customers, you name it. The kinds of topics that we research for our clients really varies. It's all over the map in terms of what we've helped our clients with. At the end of the day, we help them to either conduct research to provide insight into go-to-market strategy, to product strategy, or to enhance the user experience. And we do a fair amount of research that's designed to support thought leadership, specifically to develop content or social campaigns or PR campaigns, or even sales and event collateral that are based on high value original research, which we can conduct through a variety of methodologies, whether qualitative or quantitative. The other thing that we do, as I mentioned, is develop outreach programs for our clients, and these may be based on research that we've done, as I mentioned. So we might conduct a survey and turn that into a white paper, or research report, or infographic, what have you, or it may be strictly advisory. But again, everything we do is designed to help our clients ultimately achieve their marketing and revenue goals in the small business or small to mid-sized business space, whether it's through research or outreach programs. But that's not why you're here today. The reason that you're here is to learn about the sources that SMBs rely on, to learn about your offerings, and to make a purchase decision. So one of the things that we do, in addition to conducting, custom research for our clients, is we conduct, public research to help educate marketers, generally speaking, on the small business owner mindset, behaviors, preferences. And this is an example of that kind of research. So we really wanted to understand fundamentally what are the media that are most effective for marketers to use as they move SMBs through a sales cycle, specifically defined here as first learn about our awareness, conducting research, and then finally making a purchase decision. So what we did is conducted a survey we do a monthly survey we call the SMB Pulse. And the goal of the Pulse is to make it easy and affordable for marketers to gain insight into the US SMB market. So we survey 250 principals of companies with under 20 employees, which we call in this deck very small businesses or VSBs. We survey another 150 companies with 20 to 99 employees. We call them small businesses or SBs. And we also include a segment of what we call mid-sized businesses, or MBs, 100 to 500 employees. And you can see that we weight the data according to their actual incidence in the wild, in the real world. So the vast majority of small businesses, 98% of them are very small businesses. So when we weight the data, it looks like we didn't talk to anyone except for very small businesses. That's just the way that the real world is broken out. But we oversample bigger businesses only because it's so interesting how respondents are different by size, as well, for example, as by age and by their business outlook. We've done significance testing throughout. I'll take you through what that means in terms of the differences between segments. But we conducted this research in September that I'm going to take you through. So this is still, quite recent data. If you'd like a copy of this deck, by the way, you don't need to do screen grabs or anything. I'd be happy to send you a copy if you shoot me a note after the webcast. But just to give you a sense of who participated, again, it had to be principal, owner, founder, partner, someone at the apex of their organization. We didn't put any constraints. We did set quotas by headcount, but we gathered revenue information. You can see a good mix of respondents by company age. Most of them are 2 to 9 years old. Business outlook, at the time in September, 44% expected to grow by double digits this year, or in 2022 compared to 2021. Good mix by geography, by population density, whether they're urban, rural, or suburban, and, good mix natural distribution by industry as well as by gender, respondent age, et cetera, et cetera. So what we specifically wanted to get a sense of, again, was which media they rely on to make decisions about the products and services they need for their businesses, including, of course, SaaS solutions. So we asked about actually a total of 42 different information sources they might use, and we broke them into a couple categories. You can see here, online, broadly speaking, different kinds of websites, or, the use of search. Social media, kind of the major players there. Content, we specifically asked about a variety of different kinds of formats they might use. And then individuals or companies, and then, kind of other categories, which are primarily offline. We wanted to take you through the responses really, on kind of a temporal basis as they move through the sales cycle. So the first question that we asked was, which of the resources do they use to first learn about different kinds of offerings? Now, when we framed this question, we didn't say specifically, technology or software or SaaS or cloud solutions for your business. But if we were to do this for SaaS, we would find the results to be very similar. Like, media behavior doesn't really vary that much from category to category. Who specifically they might go to for advice will vary. For example, they may lean on their CPA more for, financial management solutions than they might for marketing solutions, for example. But generally speaking, the media don't vary that much from category to category. So this is, I think, broadly applicable to any kind of SaaS or, really broadly speaking, technology offering for their business. And what you can see is, in the online category, remember we broke these information sources out into different groupings. Search is where they're most likely to first learn about a solution. So that might mean, they hear about something and they either search, I want to learn more about that solution, or I'd like to learn about competitors to that solution, or business in general, news sites like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, or, whatever kind of general publications they're using. The product section of the vendor, or, in the case of, companies that use partner networks, the resellers network, that means specifically where they learn about your offerings, as opposed to the resources center, which is a little bit below. And that's where more you're likely to get tips or advice or case studies or use cases or infographics or, other kinds of elements that aren't specifically product related. You can see ratings or review sites, not typically the place, at least compared to search, where you first learn about solutions, but you'll see they play a bigger role later on in the sales cycle. What we've done here, just in terms of breaking out the responses, is you can see the very small businesses under 20 employees are in blue. Small businesses, 20 to 99, are in orange. MBs, mid-sized businesses, 100 to 500 employees, are in green. The little circles, that just indicates which the first, second, or third response is per column. And you'll see it varies from size group to size group. You'll also see that there's little letters in some of the bars. So for example, if you look at the orange category, the column in the middle, small businesses, there's a little A in parentheses in the business or general news sites bar. That just means that the 48% of small businesses that they first learn about products or services for their business, according, in business or general news sites, that's significantly higher than the percentage in column A, which is the very small business column. So, the way to interpret that is small businesses, again, 20 to 99 employees, are significantly more likely to learn about your offering in business or general news sites than very small businesses are. So to the degree that you're marketing to bigger businesses, for example, business or general news sites might be a more effective venue for you than, for example, if you're focused on the very small business segment. So a lot to take in. I won't provide that amount of detail in every slide, don't worry, but I just wanted to give you a sense of how to read these charts. The next category, again, still in the awareness phase of the sales cycle, is social media. And you can see YouTube here actually plays a surprisingly large role in generating awareness. So to the degree that you're using video, obviously you want to have that on your site, but YouTube is really a place to go for that. And it can play a really powerful role. Kind of interesting that Facebook is a little bit more prevalent for bigger businesses. And actually, one of the things that you'll see as you go through this is bigger businesses tend to use more media sources than smaller businesses do. And the break is really between the under 20 and the over 20, not so much between the small businesses and the mid-sized businesses. And it kind of stands to reason, the principal of a very small business is pretty much overwhelmed managing the day-to-day of their business and just doesn't have the time to review more than a handful of different sizes or, information sources. The next category we looked at, again, still in the awareness stage, was content formats. And this is a little bit of an apple to the oranges. You might say that a site is a location and, an email is a format. But still, we wanted to get a sense of, to the degree that you're thinking about a content marketing program, which are the formats that are most effective to engage, especially at the awareness stage? The short answer is articles. Across the board, regardless of company size, the small business audience tells us that that's the most likely format to get engagement, to drive awareness. Email newsletters, kind of surprisingly in this day and age of heavy reliance on social media, email newsletters still really work. And that, of course, can take or can serve two audiences, your customers, of course. So, a great way to keep them informed of, new features or new offerings or new partnerships or promotions or what have you. Also, of course, to the degree that you can get your warm prospects to subscribe to your newsletter, that's a great way to keep them in the queue until they're ready to buy. But surprisingly powerful technique as a way to engage SMBs and to drive awareness. And then we separate email into two categories: newsletters versus one-off, or promotional emails. And those are also surprisingly effective. They're ranked number 3 among companies with under 100 employees. And, if you look at what's number 2 for the biggest businesses, it's webcasts. So these work, hard to drive them at scale, but they, if you look at the responses of companies, again, with 100 to 500 employees, it's a place where they really learn about offerings, and that can be a very powerful tool to drive awareness of your solutions. The next category that we looked at was individuals or companies. And these include a variety of different kinds of folks, peers and colleagues outside of my company, other principals of organizations, your sales representative, or, that might mean the resellers representative, again, if you're using a partner network. Really important, even for awareness. You can see that's number 2 across the board. Bloggers, influencers, columnists, independent folks who have a presence online. Their accountant or CPA, their CFO or CIO, really important. You can see that's the number 2 individual, well tied in both cases for companies with over 20 employees. And then finally, technology consultant or MSP, not surprisingly, more important for bigger companies who are just more likely to have a MSP or technology consultant. So it's interesting, not huge variability. If you look down the columns, the orange and green for the bigger businesses, not too much difference among the different individuals, definitely difference, for the very smallest businesses who tend to rely on their peers. And that, by the way, is one of the reasons that we love research reports, is because of the reliance of SMBs on their peers, doing a survey and playing back the opinions and behaviors of small business owners' peers is a great way to, gain trust and credibility. But of course, the role of the vendor sales representative can't be underestimated. They work, whether it's a phone call or email or, meeting at a conference or whatever. Sales reps are very important. And then finally, again, still at the awareness stage, other sources, and these are primarily offline. So good old fashioned, broadcast, radio or TV. You can see that very small businesses really do recognize the effect that radio has on them. And it's interesting, a lot of times when we do a survey like this, small business owners being analytical at, certainly in taking a survey will say, well, I'm not affected by radio or TV, but they are, that's a great medium. And so, we always counsel our clients to, take first party research like this with a grain of salt. It's best to triangulate it against media usage research as well, direct analytics. But, regardless of whether you're getting the data from primary, asking small business owners or looking at behavior through, analytics, media reports, radio and TV can be a very powerful way to engage SMBs or drive awareness. You can see for the smallest businesses, direct mail, actually, and for the biggest businesses, they admit that a direct mail campaign, as old-fashioned as that sounds, can be effective. Print publications also seeming old-fashioned, tied for second with postcards or direct mail among very small businesses, second for for very small businesses, second for small businesses, the 20 to 99 category. But then if you look at live events, it's interesting, for the smallest businesses, that doesn't make the top three. But for biggest businesses, they really like those. Now, the challenge, as with webcasts, is it's difficult to scale events. They're expensive. Getting a booth, especially if you're at a place like SaaS, not cheap. But it can be a great place to engage your target audience. And of course, if someone has the opportunity to engage with a booth staffer and really, ask some questions about your product or to see a demo, it's a fantastic way to drive engagement. Again, with the caveats of scaling, it's definitely challenging, but, clearly among SMBs, bigger businesses, 20 plus employees, they really see that as a great way to learn about new solutions for their business. So that's the awareness stage. And I know a lot of data there. So we'll have some summaries later on in the deck. But what I wanted to move to now is, once you've captured their awareness, what do they do to really learn about your solution to find out who they should be considering and begin to narrow down, either the number of vendors they're looking at or the number of solutions that they're looking at? So same set of questions here, or same set of response options. Which of these do you use to learn about? One of the things you may notice is these bars are all longer than they were at the awareness stage. And you'll see that's true throughout the research stage. So media utilization is heaviest at the research stage. So, they have intent, when they're at the research stage. They really want to understand what you're offering, what does it do, what are its features, what are its limitations, how does it benefit companies in my industry, how does it benefit companies of my size, what kind of savings might I expect, what kind of productivity gains. They got a million questions they really want to understand, and it takes some time. So here, of course, we wanted to get into, so what do you use to do that? And again, search comes up first, regardless of company size. So again, be sure your site is optimized to support search, and be sure that you're going to reward your prospect search behavior by making it easy for them to find out about, everything they want to know about your product and how to buy it. For example, can they simply purchase it through your site, or do they need to go through a partner to get implementation assistance? And then it's a little bit more varied after search. You can see, so for example, for very small businesses, second most likely to go to the product section of your site, or again, to a business or general news site. For bigger businesses, they're actually next most likely to go to the ratings or review sites like the G2s or Software Advices of the world. So, really important to have visited those sites and be sure that your product is being presented fairly or is on there in the first place. And then the resources section, this is perhaps surprising, but small businesses, especially the 20 to 500, they really rely on the resources section of your site to get context for the use of your offering. So in the banking category, for example, a lot of small business owners still don't really understand what's the difference between a loan and a line of credit. And so for a bank to have an article that explains to them, like a loan is something that you take out in a fixed amount and you pay it back over a fixed period, same amount each pay period or each month, as opposed to a line of credit. And that really helps them understand, oh, well, I need a line of credit because I don't always need cash and I don't want to be committed to paying it back on a regular basis. And likewise, if you have explanatory content that helps them understand, again, what's your category? What do you do? How is it going to help them improve their operations? That's huge. And it's kind of surprising that it's not even higher among very small businesses who tend to be less educated about technology, generally speaking. But again, they don't have the time to peruse a lot of different information sources, even during the research stage. Social media, again, higher utilization at the research than at the awareness stage. But again, YouTube is the most sought or used social media site. You can see, again, regardless of company size. Very close behind is Instagram, surprisingly, for the biggest businesses, and LinkedIn. So important to have a presence there. For smaller businesses, Facebook and Instagram. But, and you can see here, it's really interesting, the utilization of social media is a lot higher among the biggest than the smallest businesses. And then again, content resources, articles are still overall the most popular format, but there's more variability at the research stage, after after articles, I should say. So, for example, for companies with 20 to 500 employees, research report, again, conducting a survey, helping business owners understand, how, for example, your customers have benefited from their offerings can be really powerful. If you're targeting companies with 20 to 99 employees, an analyst report can be a potent way to do that. Case studies are really useful, especially for companies with 100 to 500 employees. So you can see some variability. And again, the bigger the company, the heavier the utilization of every resource. And then the individuals or companies they rely on, again, more reliance on everybody at this stage than for awareness. In particular, peers and colleagues, once again, although for small businesses, you'll see now they're slightly more likely to rely on your sales representative or, again, those of your partner network. For bigger businesses here, you can see they're 100 to 500 category, pretty likely to rely on the technology consultant or MSP. You can see that second overall. So, I think it's interesting calling out the differences between the size segments because it really does matter. So, really important to consider who your target audience is. And again, you might be targeting by industry. And we do have those breakouts if you'd like to see those, quite a bit of variability as you'd expect. But again, the SMB market, in the US, to pick a number, somewhere between 27 and 33 million businesses, depending on whose numbers you use. Really important to pick a target audience and have a defined strategy. And here, when we talked about other sources, print publications, pretty powerful, especially for very small businesses, live events, again, the number one place to go for bigger companies of 20 to 500 employees. So now moving to the purchase stage, this is possibly the most interesting for everyone who's in the business of making money. So here we wanted to ask about, again, which are the online resources that you use. And one thing you'll probably notice is all the bars are shorter. And again, the media utilization in every category is much higher at the research stage than it is at the purchase stage. So, you really want to catch them when they're researching, because that's, very important to, again, whittling the vendor options down to a very few. And at the purchase stage, they're really looking for the final decision around pricing or implementation, or, what's the growth strategy of the organization? How can I customize it? So again, really important to support them in research, because that's where they're really persuadable. And here again, at the purchase stage, they're relying less on information sources as a general rule. Product section of your site, you probably recall search was most important for awareness and for research. And now at the purchase stage, they really do lean on your site. So again, really important to make it easy for them to understand what your offerings are, what the pricing is, what the implementation assistance is. Are there any free trial offers or discounts or anything that they can take advantage of? And kind of surprisingly, for the biggest businesses, the 100 to 500, the resources section of your site. So again, really important to provide context for the use of your offerings via articles or blog posts or white papers or whatever is most useful there. Social media, you see, again, utilization has really dropped, still higher among MBs than VSBs or SBs, in almost every case, significantly more so, but also much less utilization at the purchase stage than it was at the research stage. But I'm sorry, I moved a little bit too quickly. YouTube is still number one. Facebook is still number two. Except among the biggest businesses who rely on Facebook the most, and Instagram, surprisingly, perhaps number three. Content formats, again, shorter bars here, much less utilization of content formats across the board. But you may remember articles were number one at the awareness and the research stage. Here it's video. And we broke this out, video on your website as opposed to, putting it on YouTube. Obviously, if you have a video, you're going to put it in as many places as you can, but be sure to have it on your site. That can really help your prospects to make a decision on your offering. And interactive tools also really moved up in terms of popularity at the purchase stage. So if you have, for example, a calculator that can help someone determine, how much am I going to save through the use of your solution, or how much productivity am I going to boost, or, what kind of quality improvements might I see, or, whatever the metrics are. If you can help them to get a sense of that by providing an interactive tool, that can be really powerful, especially for the 20 to 99 segment. And then a checklist or a worksheet, not as difficult to create as an interactive tool, but almost as powerful. And that simply, might be a checklist for implementation, or it might be a checklist for onboarding their customers or their employees, or, there's a whole bunch of things that you can create checklists around, but a very powerful tactic as a way to make SMBs feel comfortable with the selection of your solution. And then webinars, kind of interesting down at the bottom. But for the biggest businesses, surprisingly powerful way to get them, again, to select your solution. Individuals or companies, again, another category that we looked at here, the vendor sales representative has moved up. You might remember peers were most important at the awareness and at the research stage, but here, again, depending on who your sales force is, whether it's direct or indirect, they're really important, although slightly less so for small businesses, 2099, they're most likely to rely on their CFO or CIO, or, there's, a functional head is going to be very involved. CIO clearly in every case, if they have one. But, if you're selling marketing applications, the CMO will be involved, your chief sales officer, if it's a sales solution, you name it. But they're obviously going to be very heavily involved in the purchase stage. The accountant or CPA, if they have one, also very likely to be involved just from a, cash flow forecasting standpoint. And then you can see down at the bottom, bloggers, influencers, not in the top three, but still pretty important for the biggest businesses. And then finally, the other sources, again, all less important at the purchase than at the research stage. But live events and trade shows are number one for very small and small businesses. And then kind of surprisingly, print publications are number one, but that's, more or less statistical noise. They're just a hair more popular than either live events or radio and TV or even direct mail to make a purchase. So what we did, I know we threw a lot of data at you on all those slides. We looked at 42 different information sources at 3 different stages of the sales cycle by 3 different size groups. So what we did is tried to simplify it a little bit just by looking at the top 5 information sources. By company size, again, you may or may not be targeting SMBs by headcount. And even if you are, your definitions may be different from ours. But generally speaking, just to help simplify things a little bit, search, you can see, goes from second most important overall to first at the research stage to third at the purchase stage. So clearly, make sure you're set up for SEO. Articles, surprisingly, perhaps most important at the awareness stage, drop out of the top 5. Actually, everything but search drops out of the top 5 from awareness going into research. And then you can see the product section of your site goes from number 2 at the research stage to number 1 when they're finally making a purchase decision. So you can see quite a bit of variability by format or information source from stage to stage. When you look at small businesses, the 20 to 99 cycle, search is number 1 at the awareness and the research stage, then drops down to number 4. And live events or trade shows, again, nothing else in the awareness stage remains in the top 5. And the product section of your site, as was the case with very small businesses, appears in the top 5 at the research stage and jumps to being number 1 at the purchase stage of the sales cycle. So again, can't overstate the importance of making it easy when someone comes to your site, which they're going to do via search, for them to find out, what your offerings are and how they're going to benefit from them. And then finally, for the mid-sized businesses, the 100 to 500, like VSB's article is the most effective information source at the awareness stage. Search is in the top 5. That goes to number 3 for the research stage. You can see different content formats are important at the research stage as well, a research report or case study. And what's interesting, though, for MBs, unlike very small businesses or small businesses, nothing carries over from the top 5 in the research stage to the top 5 at the purchase stage. And, if we had extended this to the top 10 or top 15, you would see the role of the vendor or reseller sales representative in every case would become more important as you move through the sales cycle. So that's really everything. What I wanted to do, I know we're halfway through, but I wanted to give you a couple more slides. This is separate from the media that you might use to engage with SMBs. Here, what I wanted to talk about is some research we also did on messaging. Same survey, same set of respondents. But we also asked, basically, what is it that's important to you in the cloud or SaaS, as on the assumption that we can use those terms interchangeable. I know they're not identical, but for the purposes of SMBs, they certainly think of software utilization in the same way, whether it's SaaS or in the cloud. So just, when you're thinking about how to message, how to prioritize the benefits that you're offering, well, reliability is surprisingly important. For the reasons that SMBs move from on-premises solutions to SaaS or the cloud. So really something to emphasize, and that's not necessarily going to be your number 1 benefit, but that's certainly something that SMBs see as a rationale. For very small businesses, they love, the benefit of the cloud is no matter where they are, they can access their applications and data. And you can see the, kind of top 3 vary by size quite a bit. So security is really important for bigger SMBs. The 20 to 500 is number 2. And what's third for VSBs and SBs, improved capabilities and functionality is different for what's third for MBs, which is easy management and administration. So again, really important to understand who you're targeting to determine how best to message to them, or, in other words, how to be most compelling. This continuation of the benefits, you can see, some other reasons for SMBs to adopt SaaS solutions. Not as important as on the previous slide, but it is interesting to see, for example, that in many cases, especially bigger businesses, the 100 to 500, are motivated by either industry requirements or government regulations, something to keep in mind. Another question that we wanted to ask on the messaging front, again, as opposed to the media, was, do you agree that these cloud solutions have these various benefits? Well, remote access is easier. Yes, very, not surprisingly. Availability is higher. The VSBs are most likely to agree with that. And what you can see overall, though, is like basically everyone agrees with everything. I think the lowest percent of agreement we had is 80%, 4 out of 5. But there are a lot of benefit to the cloud, but when you're thinking about, how to message, again, what's most important to your audience, you do want to emphasize things like availability, faster implementation, ease of maintenance, and continuing on that list, security, which you can see is very important, especially to bigger businesses. And that's something we've seen for years and years in our SMB research. Security is important. It's increasingly important. And the bigger the company, the more important it is. And then the final question on, and this is more aspects of security. We just wanted to get a sense of these different aspects of the cloud. So again, this is a couple different ways of getting at what's the most important to SMBs about SaaS solutions. So security, clearly important to SMBs. In this case, it's not more important to MBs than it is to VSBs. Usually in our research it is, but still, it's really important to everybody. Proven technology, that's interesting because, their SMBs tend to be, depending on their industry or the age of the owner, tend to be risk averse. But if you can demonstrate that you have a proven technology, you don't have to be a Fortune 500 brand to succeed with SMBs. Integration, really important, of course. And then it comes from a well-known company. That's a plus for the bigger companies, but again, not so important for the smaller businesses. Again, they'll give you a chance if you can demonstrate that you really have a useful solution for them that's proven. You have case studies that you can point to and secure. So anyway, that's it. What I wanted to do is wrap up with a couple of takeaways, because again, we've dumped a lot of data on you, and we just wanted to give hopefully some actionable implications. So one of the things that I mentioned was SMBs are imperfect reporters of ad influence. And I mentioned, for example, they aren't always 100% objective about how important radio or TV or, banner ads are. So really important to use analytics and third-party data in addition to primary data like this to optimize your media plans. Search, as we discussed, is critical for all stages of the sales cycle and all sizes of SMB. So again, really important to ensure that your site is optimized or the sites of your resellers is optimized for search. Email is surprisingly important for awareness, whether it's for newsletters or one-off emails. So, take advantage of it. SMBs are kind of surprisingly receptive. That doesn't mean they're all going to open and click on your newsletter or your email, but it's a surprisingly effective and powerful tactic. YouTube, as we saw on the social media side, really an essential site, really important to have a presence there. And testing through it. And of course, if you do go through the time and expense of developing video, make sure you use it on your site and promote it as much as you can, post it everywhere. Articles are important, as we saw, for different content formats, especially at the awareness stage. So really important, as you would do with any message, testing or media testing. Assess the topics that are working best. And it may be for you that articles don't work best. You may be targeting bigger businesses that are more interested in research reports. So, don't just test the topics, but test the formats. Because again, your mileage may vary depending on who exactly you're targeting. Research reports, rating sites. Again, those speak to the importance of peer review or peer influence. So, research reports that you can put out or, how your solution is rated on the, again, G2s of the world, really important. And really important to be on relevant rating sites and, to be as well reviewed as you can. And then finally, in terms of takeaways, Interactive tools and checklists in terms of content formats, really important at the sales stage. So use those if you can, especially checklists. Again, really great. The checklists are really good and powerful and easy to develop. Interactive tools, again, are not necessarily so. They sound great, but believe me, not always easy to pull together. And your site, I think we've harped on this sufficiently, really critical across the sales cycle to support search, because business owners rely on the product section of your site, because, as we saw, even as the biggest businesses really rely on the resources section of your site. So be sure your content is relevant. It's industry specific, or at least, as specific as you can make it to your target audiences. Make sure that it's intuitive, the navigation, that it's, customer and not you focused. We could go on and on about that, but you can't overstate the importance of your site, whether it's because folks are using search to get there or because they'll tell you straight up, your resource center, the content section, the product section of your site is super important. And again, your sales reps, really essential at the research and the purchase stages. So, stands to reason. Be sure they're well trained, be sure they're well supported, be sure they're easily accessible. Utilization is highest, as we saw, at the research stage. So be sure you're providing a lot of resources to support SMBs who come to your site. Utilization increases with company size. So again, to the degree that you're focused on bigger businesses, you can provide them a wide range of different, for example, content formats, or be on a whole bunch of different social media sites. Be more selective if you're focused on very small businesses. They just don't utilize so many media. So you really want to be sure that you're focused on the ones that they do use. And again, marketing 101, utilization varies by the size of your target, the stage they are at the sales cycle, and their industry and other attributes. Of course, the age of the owner is surprisingly important. Millennial business owners are much more avid consumers of content than boomers are, for example. So, again, research your audience's preferences to the degree that you can, and really understand, where they spend time, whether it's online or at events, for example, and where they don't. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to take questions, but I think there was a comment or a question on if we can share the deck. Yeah, if you'd like a copy of this deck, please do shoot me a note. My email's here, and hope I will be seeing you at the SaaS Connect conference, and I'll have some different research to present there. That's going to be more also SaaS related, but specifically on product solutions as opposed to media and messaging. But if we can help bring value to your SMB sales efforts, we'd also love the opportunity to support you via research or go to market support via content. I want to thank you all for your attendance. I hope you found this to be valuable, useful, actionable information. We hope that, again, you'll join us on other master classes coming to you soon. And again, we hope we'll see you in San Francisco at SaaS Connect in the not too distant future.